everyone, my name is Faith Wasson and I'm a flutist living just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. If you've been keeping up with my series, this episode I'll be talking about the flute that I currently play on, which is a solid silver Brannen and a solid silver Manckhe head joint. So, if you remember from my last episode, I was talking about how I was outgrowing my Haynes flute in my master's. At the end of my senior year, I had really felt I should really be looking for a new instrument. I just feel like I can get a bigger dynamic range. I could be more in tune. I could play with more colors on a different instrument. So I began my search, and let me tell you, I tried everything. I went to the Flute Center of New York multiple times. I tried flutes at the Flute Pro Shop. I tried flutes from Flute World, which has 3 locations in San Francisco, South Carolina, I believe, and Michigan. And even while I was in Ireland, I went over to All Flutes Plus in London. So I'll start by telling you about the experience I had at each of those stores. So my experience with the Flute Pro Shop was wonderful. That was back when I was trying to get my first professional flute, the Haynes flute. And they set up a private consultation with me and asked me what my needs were and showed me all the flutes that they thought that I would be interested in. But for my current flute, when I was looking to upgrade, the first place I went was the Flute Center of New York. In fact, I went there twice. And I set up consultations with them. They provide you with your own private room. I had asked for some flutes ahead of time that I would be interested in. So basically what I did is I told them my budget, what general sort of thing I was looking for, and the use, as in I would be playing every day going into my master's. And they took out of their giant wall of flutes all these flutes that they had suggested to me. I remember there being Haynes, Altus, Burkhardt, Brannen, Powell probably, Senkio, just any flute brand you could think of. And during that time, the 2 times that I went there, what I sort of narrowed it down to was that I just didn't really like the sound of gold. For me personally, I just feel more comfortable on a silver flute. I could just produce the most varied tone colors, and the sound best suited my playing. So that was very helpful, and they were very eager to help me at the Flute Center of New York. I did have some problems communicating exactly what I wanted because they can't always get the exact flute that you want. They have a huge selection, but sometimes they just don't have in stock what you're looking for at any of these places. So then I went off to do my master's, still not having purchased a new flute, only looking online and trying many things from the Flute Center of New York twice, possibly 3 times by then. So I went to do my master's in Ireland at the Royal Irish Academy of Music in Dublin, and I was still very much looking for a new flute. I had tried my teacher's flute, which was an Altus, and heard about these Haynes flutes, these new Haynes flutes, and since that was what I currently played on, that was what I was most interested in. So I took a trip over to London because it's very close, and there is a beautiful flute shop there called All Flutes Plus. I had emailed them ahead of time asking to try this Altus and a Haynes flute, solid silver, a few different types of Altus because they have different metals. Even within their silver, they have powdered silver and Britannia silver, and every flute sounds slightly different. So they were just absolutely wonderful. They had set up a private room for me, and every time I asked, oh, could I have one, could I try one with a C-sharp trill key, or could I try a different head joint with this, they were just able to swap it out right then, and they even sat and listened to me play. I asked, could I get some feedback on these flutes? And at the time, I had narrowed it down to a Brannen, which I was not thinking I would be interested in, a Brannen, an Altus, and a Haynes. But I just couldn't decide, so I didn't purchase anything. Now, I started having some major problems with my Haynes flute. It started just deteriorating, as it does with massive use every day. So I decided, it's really time I need to buy a new flute rather than get it overhauled. It had already been overhauled once. So I contacted Flute World, somewhere I hadn't tried yet because their physical shop is not near where I live. But I figured maybe they would have some instruments that they can send to me for trial. So I had requested an Altus and a Haynes, and I didn't even bother with the Brannen. I wasn't interested. But the extremely helpful consultant had thrown in the box this used Brannen that they thought was in my price range and very similar to the other flutes that I had requested, and they thought, why not? I'll just throw it in the box. I was so surprised when I received that. So I had requested a few different Altus head joints, a few different Haynes head joints, and then they had just happened to throw in a few Manckhe head joints in the box. So this was December of 2019, and I was home for Christmas break, and I was just rapidly trying. I only had a few weeks to try all these flutes, and I really wanted to find the right one. At this point, I had been playing on my teacher's Altus, which I absolutely loved, and I just wanted so badly to buy that Altus and have a brand new flute of my own. But when I received that Haynes, Altus, and Brannen in the box, the Brannen just stood out to me and I could not stop playing it. And I was debating between a different Manckhe head joint with a gold lip plate or this solid silver. I couldn't decide what sounded better. So I kept sending my teachers and colleagues different recordings that were anonymous in terms of they didn't know which flute I was playing. And they always picked the Brannen. All my family was picking the Brannen with these two different Manckhe head joints going back and forth. So, needless to say, I ended up buying this used 2003 handmade Brannen flute. And it has some very special features. It has a C-sharp trill key, which I highly recommend purchasing a flute with a C-sharp trill key. It has a D-sharp roller on the foot joint. It has a B foot joint, but most interestingly, it has a removable B foot joint key, making the flute a C flute. And there is another little adapter that you put on the end there. This was something I hadn't even ever heard of, but to have a C foot joint makes the sound slightly brighter and can be used for different purposes and different repertoire. And the head joint I ended up buying is this Manckhe head joint, solid silver. It is slightly too big for the Brannen, as they were not built for each other, so I just have this copper tape on here to make it fit. And I could not be happier with this combination that I ended up buying. This solid silver 2003 used Brannen and the solid silver Manckhe head joint. And I want to say that the consultants at Flute World were just absolutely wonderful. I would not have been able to find my what I would call perfect flute if they hadn't thoughtfully put in the box something that I didn't even request. So I highly recommend working with Flute World. They do trials of all different types of flutes, and this has been my story of how I ended up playing a Brannen with a Manckhe head joint. So let me know in the comments what kind of flute you play. How did you decide? And what has your experience been? So it took me 2 years to find my, what I would call perfect flute, but it was worth every second of trying absolutely everything under the sun. So thanks so much for watching and have a great day. Bye bye!